So here's a bird's eye view of the learning experience at Redemption Seminary. And I'll start off by just highlighting the three stages here. Um, One is orientation. As you start off your seminary program, there are new things to learn, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming to be introduced to new tools, new ways of doing things, things that require concentration. But that's just part of the process. And I wanted to encourage you that we'll give you these orientation materials. We have a checklist. We have explanatory videos that you can review as far as how to get started and how things work. So you get plenty of orientation materials up front. You can take as much time as you need to go through that, and we're right alongside you the whole way. If there's anything you need, we can set up a Zoom meeting one-on-one to go through even your own computer setup and things like that. So just wanted to give you a heads up that there are new things to learn, but anything worthwhile is typically going to require a little bit of a learning curve like that. So orientation is the first step, and you're usually doing that just as you begin your first course. So you register for your first course after being accepted, and then you get oriented at the beginning as you start working through that first course in the program. Now, as Dr. Schwant mentioned, our program is unique because we have both asynchronous, not at the same time as other students and professors, and synchronous at the same time elements. And let me explain a little bit more of what that looks like. To get the flexibility that a lot of adult learners need because of their busy schedules, we actually allow a very flexible, self-paced part of every course. So we actually split our courses into these two parts. The first part is preparation, and then the second part is mentoring. Now, at most institutions, you'll have probably an 8-week term, and when that course starts, you're now bound to those deadlines of when certain large assignments are due. There may be an exam to finish the course, and it has to be done on a certain day. Oftentimes, they'll require a bulletin board post on Tuesdays and Thursdays, reply to other students and things like that. But what we've tried to do is remove that so that you can take as much time as you need to work through the course on your own. Now, we're here to support you during that time, but if you need to speed up to make more headway faster, you can do that. If you need to slow down and take your time, you can do that as well. So our preparation phase for each course is completely flexible as far as how long you take to go through that. Now, when you're ready, that's when the mentoring starts. That's when you start meeting with a mentor professor one-on-one over Zoom, and you go through one unit at a time. So to finish out a course in the mentoring phase, it's 7 30-minute meetings with your professor. And in each of those meetings, you talk about one unit of the class that you've been working through ahead of time. So that's an overview. You've got your orientation, which is just something to expect as you get started in the program. Then you start your first course and you begin preparing, working through the different elements on your own. And then you schedule out when you expect to talk with your mentor and work through and finish it out. So here's a breakdown. Orientation, preparation. Actually, there's these elements that I'll show you in this session. Moodle, or popularly LMS. This is the learning management system where you get your course instructions. So there's each step detailed out for you with links to what your readings and videos are that you're working through. And so Moodle will take you into Logos, and that's where you get your content. Now, thinking back to the very first time I met Dr. Schwan, I think it was at a conference in 2015, and he was with Logos at the time on staff, and he was the director of Logos Mobile Ed. And that was something we connected on because I was thinking, as I was revamping a distance learning department, there are so many incredible scholars who've already recorded their material. And Logos has transcribed that, integrated it into their software. And yet so many of our seminaries and schools are trying to record their own professors, turn that into transcriptions. And the time it takes to do that is such a long time scale that by the time you build out a full program, the original lectures are so old that it's been decades probably until you build out as many courses as you need in some cases, or it just takes too much capital to do that. So I was thinking, why not take advantage of these world-class scholars who record their material, and why try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the lecture portion? And so that's exactly what Logos Mobile Ed has done. And one of the ways that Redemption stands out is that we actually use that integrated those videos from top scholars. Dr. Heiser is one of those. We have several others that you'd probably recognize their names, but that is the lecture content that you go through. You pair that with readings from all kinds of different resources in Logos all at once, and then your output is your Google document, a workbook for each course, instead of a high stakes exam or a research paper. So that's the preparation stage. The mentoring stage is when you meet with professors one-on-one and you talk through the material. You'll do a brief presentation that kind of highlights things that you've written down in your workbook. They're already looking over your workbook, able to give you feedback on that. They might have follow-up questions for you, and you can have questions for them to talk through how this applies to your life, whatever your ministry context is, whatever areas of growth you're focusing on. And so it's a very personal experience. A lot of schools, you don't ever really get to spend time with a professor, especially not one-on-one. Even if you get to ask a few questions in a class session, it's very rare to get significant time with the professor with the doctoral degree as you go through a course. In fact, I talked to one student who recently was accepted. He told me that he'd gone through an entire online program through a well-known online university. He had also completed a master's program through a graduate school, a Christian graduate school, but also very well known. But he said that during the entire program, both bachelor's and master's degree, he never had a conversation with another student or professor that entire time. And I thought that is just tragic, to miss out on talking with a real human being about what you're learning. There's so much value in that ability to discuss the material with another person that it's a shame when that's missing. So that's another piece we're designed to overcome. You actually get to know your professors, and that's one of the most rewarding parts of the program for many students. So with that overview in mind, again, feel free to drop questions into the chat, but let me show you a quick preview of what it's like to go through Moodle, into Logos, and then out to your workbook. What we're looking at here is Moodle, and this is the learning management system. So you'd log into this site when you get access to your first course, and you go to the course. In this case, it's the first one, SF 511, Spiritual Formation. You can go to the Start Here area to get an orientation video, which covers some of the same things as we're talking about right now, but also in more detail. Here's an orientation guide for you. But if you go over here to lesson 1, this is where your course begins. You just work through each lesson, and there's 5 lessons in each unit, and it's 7 units per course. So 5 lessons per unit, and then that unit is what you talk about in each of your 7 meetings with your professor. So you pop out your menu, and you can see each step of the lesson here. So let's look at step 2. And this is an example of where the LMS instructions direct you into Logos. There's a link right here that will open your software to the correct location. So you're following the instructions that we've designed for you, and that takes you directly into Logos Mobile Ed inside your Logos software app. Now, I'm showing you the computer version, so this includes everything that you'll do in the program, all the steps that you'll be doing in Logos. There are ways to customize it. If you're a person that likes to read paper books, you can get a paper copy of a textbook on your own. If you like to do some things on mobile, there's mobile apps for our LMS, there's mobile app for Logos, and there's a lot you can do in that way as well. But we're primarily looking at how to do it all on a computer. So a Mac or a PC will both work great, but that's what we're seeing today. So this is the video that you'd watch, and each segment, each step in a lesson is broken down into less than 10 minutes for each video, and definitely less than 30 minutes for any one activity. So it has a lot of variety, so you can just focus on completing each step at a time. You'll notice here that another wonderful feature is you don't have to write down notes on everything the lecturer says, because it's all transcribed right here for you. You can also even search through this if you forgot where something that he said was located, like where he quoted a certain Bible book or something like that. You can actually search the contents of the lectures. And to me, that is something I wish I would have had in seminary, because I spent a lot of my time just writing down what was said in the audio or video recordings so that I could save that for later. But in Logos, you actually have all of that right here. So that is what it's like. You go through Moodle step by step, and then that takes you into readings and videos and Logos, which is where you spend most of your time as far as the learning experience and the research. Now, from there, you go to your course portfolio. So instead of exams, instead of one big research paper due on a certain day, you're doing a workbook. And This is designed around each of the lessons. So if you go to lesson one, you'll see these are the questions that you're going to be asked to respond to for that first lesson. So you can see the first one here: define self-leadership and explain its importance. And you type out your answer, it gives you the suggested length. And you would answer this based on what you've just learned by going through Dr. Irving's videos in Logos Mobile Ed and also the readings for this course in that lesson. So it's helpful to look at these questions ahead of time and be looking for things that you can note to reflect in your response for later. And we also give you training on how to manage all your references and citations using a program called Zotero that can serve you your whole life long as you learn and research and take notes about the things that are important to you. So that's a lesson in a nutshell. You've answered 4 questions. That's probably about average. Sometimes it's less, sometimes more. And each of them is drawn from the material that you've been guided through in the instructions in Moodle. And we are moving courses over into Populi, which is our other system I'll show you in just a minute. But for right now, our Moodle is where you get the instructions. They take you into Logos, and then you write about it in your workbook. So I hope that's good news, that you don't have a big exam you have to cram for. You don't have a giant research paper that has to be turned in on a certain date. You can look forward to talking with a real person about the material you've done in your workbook. And so it lessens the stress level and increases the human side and the application to real life in ministry that you can actually talk about with another person. So with that, let me switch over and I'll show you a little bit about what the mentoring side looks like before I turn it over to Dr. Schwann, and we'll get into some Q&A. What we're looking at right now is Populi. This is our college management software. As I mentioned, eventually we're going to use this for more, including what we now use Moodle for. But this is what your professors use to give you feedback. So I'm logged in as a student right now. So when you're registered for a course and working with a professor, you'll be able to navigate to your course right here. And this breaks down the series of 7 meetings for you. And you can actually go in here and see exactly what your professor is going to be talking with you about. Each unit is set up in a rubric. So here's what you can expect to talk about with your professor as you talk about unit 1 that you've prepared for using your workbook and all the readings and videos and logos. The first unit learning objective is the student is able to define self-leadership and explain its importance. So remember that first question in your workbook? That's how you prepared to talk with your professor about that topic. And then the second one is the student is able to identify and discuss the ways they're attentive to their inner life, their emotions, relationships, inner barriers, negative and positive thought patterns, etc. These are the things that Dr. Irving talked about in the early part of his lectures in this course. Now, our program starts off with this course that deals with the inner life of a Christian leader. And I love that that's the case, even though it's not what everybody expects when they get into seminary. Because if you read the headlines that unfortunately keep coming out, if you might have had some experiences that relate to this, the character of Christian leaders is the number one issue when it comes to longevity in ministry and being a consistent blessing to others in their faith. And so the fact that this course addresses that, both from the perspective of reflecting on your own life, where God has led you, and how you're developing into Christ likeness, also the biblical side of that in the second half of this course, it's just a great place to start the program. Then you get into Old Testament, then New Testament, then interpreting the Bible, then theology, systematic theology, and church history, discipleship, and then on toward your final project, which is a project you designed to apply it to however God is calling you. So that's a snapshot of all the different pieces. Obviously, we could spend more time digging into each one, but essentially, you're following the instructions in our LMS. You're engaging in Logos as your primary experience with videos, research steps, and readings there. And then you're writing about it in your workbook. And then when you're ready, discussing it with your professor. So I hope that helps you get a little bit of an idea of what it's like. But I'm sure there's questions, and we have myself and Dr. Schwann and also other students and professors here that'd be glad to answer some of those and talk with you about them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but we can open it back up again if the need arises. But Dr. Schwann, it's back to you.
All right. There's a number of great questions. And Joel, there's most of these are directed to you. There was one about the library. You're making sure that you from Michael, making sure that you could keep be on the list to make sure you get the library. And so there's no cost to switch programs. You can always change your mind. And so just to set your mind at ease, you could just start with the MABS, and then after 3 courses, graduate, which is the certificate, if that's all you want. And so then you have the option either way. So I think that answers the question. Um, so Joel, there's some questions about SF511, and well, actually, a bigger question, the difference between the program journal and the course workbook. Well, let's start with that one.
Yes. So I didn't show the program journal, but that's another Google document that you use occasionally as you go throughout the entire program. And what it does is you start with a first draft at the beginning of the program, and it asks you a few questions about your background, your strengths, your giftings, as a way of kind of setting a foundation, and beginning to track your growth throughout the program. So what's cool about the second document, the program journal, is your professors actually leave you growth related comments at the end of every course. So when you get to the end of a course with a professor, they actually leave you a comment to encourage your growth and to point out areas where you're doing great. And those comments are in light of the program level objectives. So each course has its own learning objectives. Then there's program level objectives, and that's the focus of the program journal. So Ryan, your question, the workbook I showed you was for the course. That's the primary document you'll be interacting with as your course portfolio, we call it. And I just showed you the one for the first course in the program, SF511. But there is that second document, the program journal, and you fill out a first draft at the beginning of the program, and then it gets updated as you go. You add your own reflections after each course. Your professor does the same, and then I get to look it over as you get to the end of the program and see, look at all the things that you've learned throughout the program. This is where you started, and now here you are at the end. So it's a great tool for tracking growth across the whole program. But that is a second Google document. And it doesn't get any more complicated than that. It's just one document for each course, and then the program journal, and that's it. So very
And
good question.
the program journal spans multiple courses, kind of connects them together.